Okay, so I'm going to actually kick off the event with a question. Okay, so hands up who remembers this. And what I'm expecting to see is a bit of a generational thing going on here. Okay, so for those who don't know what that is our friend the Millennium Bug. And in 1999, a year after the first Data Protection Act, the IT world was in a frenzy because on the stroke of midnight, 1st of January 2000, the planes were going to fall out of the skies, the life support machines were going to stop, and it was going to be absolute chaos. So leading up to that event, we saw lots and lots of newspaper scare stories. Some of them were actually very funny, spoofs of the event, but it was very much, the whole of this was driven by fear. And this was globally, not just in the UK. And it has been estimated that they spent between 300 and 500 billion pound combating the Millennium Bug. Was that money well spent? Well, those who spent the money said yes, because those planes didn't fall and the life support machines didn't fail. However, there were countries who didn't spend very much money at all on the Millennium Bug, and they were absolutely fine. Italy was one, South Korea was another. And thinking in the UK, that schools, there was very little work done on protecting data and systems in schools, and there wasn't really much of a problem. So, when we look at GDPR, there is a lot of scare stories in the press, usually around how much we are going to get fined as soon as we breach. And yeah, that's the main focus, is fines, fines, fines. And what we're actually seeing, for me, is this is a here be dragons moment. This is my favorite slide of the whole of my presentation. Enjoy this, because we are talking about GDPR. When do you see slides of dragons? That's what I want to know. And what I'm seeing, my favorite, I think, is LinkedIn. Is a crazy place to go into, with all sorts of things happening in there. You get people who say, I'm a GDPR expert offering consultancy. And at the moment, as you know, there's no case law. How can you be an expert of something which the ICO and Article 29 actually haven't finalised? Basically, what they are is after lots of money. And what I would say is be skeptical of anybody who says they're an expert. You can buy our GDPR solutions now. Okay, so go back to the previous bullet point. How can you have a GDPR compliant solution when we don't actually know what GDPR is at the moment? So obviously, be very skeptical about those sorts of claims. Our product will make you compliant. And yes, there are some solutions out there which will help you trawl through your systems to pull out and identify potential personal data. Okay, so you've identified it, that's a good start, but you've still got to do a lot of work. So again, lots of money. And my favorite was, after Brexit, the GDPR won't apply to the UK. Okay, and there was a recent survey that 44% of firms, top 150 that was, think the regulation won't apply to the UK business after Brexit. And obviously, we all know there's a bill going through Parliament. That just isn't the case. And the ICO have been very proactive recently in trying to persuade and cajole private sector to take this seriously. And what the ICO very much are talking about is don't focus on fines, focus on risk, transparency, control, and accountability. So here we go. What I want the rest of this brief introduction is really just to give you some pointers to some places where you can go to and some things that you can think of if you haven't done already. Some of this I'm sure you already know. So at JISC, we're looking at implementing GDPR like anybody else. We've used the 12 steps from the ICO. We've actually removed 2 steps. Children's and international, we don't think applies to us as a company. At the moment, we're having a watching brief on both. And then we've reorganized the staircase, because if you work your way through from 1 to 12 and when you get to 11 it says get a data protection officer, I would suggest that might be too late and you have to start again. So we've reorganized it and put data protection officer at the top, and yes, so that's how I've ended up getting that one then. And basically I'll just show you the way that the 10 steps that we're actually applying at the moment. So awareness from day one. I'm sure you're all starting to work and trying to alert people of what's happening. The information asset is a key, and working on information and identifying your information is an absolute key and a real challenge, because it's not a 5-minute job, as those of you who are trying to do that will tell you. We've been doing a lot of work around the legal basis for processing. Individual rights we've started to look at, but again, we're sort of waiting for the ICO, but I don't think we're going to be waiting for much longer on that. Again, consent, we've done some work around that. The data breaches stuff, we've already got data breaches processes in place, so our information security officers just had to tweak from our understanding, so that's okay for us. The big challenge, I think, is the data protection by design, particularly around some of the systems that you hold. I'm thinking of your key HR and student records. You might have a CRM, which is going to hold a lot of personal data. And with GDPR coming along, you're going to have to make that data protection robust, to be able to do the individual rights work around that as well. And that can be a challenge. So I'm working closely with the HR company that we've recently purchased to persuade them to start building stuff into their system, so we can actually run retention, we can delete, we could do portability if we need to. And again, say that is always difficult when you're then trying to get business to take this responsibly. And yeah, finally, we're just doing some stuff around that privacy information and subject access. So that's really been our approach to it. You notice that on the time slide, it started in January, it ends in May. I haven't put very much else on there apart from December, eek. Anyway, let's move on quickly. So there are some good sites out there, and I wanted to just put these up. Again, I'm sure you all know about this, but just in case, here's a few sites that I would recommend you going to. These slides will be available, so you can go straight to them. The ICO and the Article 29 Working Group sites are absolutely key. There's lots of really good stuff in there. Some of it can be quite confusing, and some of it can be quite contradictory, but there's a lot of work there. For those of you who aren't from a legal background, that's me, and get rather confused by Article 31 and Article 26, and it goes around in my head a bit, really. There are, apart from being able to talk to colleagues, there are some, again, very useful sites. This is just one, the Two Birds, the Bird and Bird site, and they've got a very nice breakdown of the changes, and it's actually in English. I actually can read it and understand it. So, but I'm not here to plug that site. I'll just say that is one site. There's lots of others as well. We also ourselves have got a new GDPR site. Have anybody looked at our site yet? Good, I'm glad Andrew has. There's one or two. Okay then, I would really, really, really recommend this, not just because I work for JISC, and some of us have put this together. The guidance and advice on there is sector-based, and it's free. So click on there and have a look. There is also a link to a blog that Andrew Cormack, who you'll be hearing later, actually works on, and posts stuff which is purely, again, sector driven. And so any latest guidance that comes out of the ICO or Article 29, Andrew will look at, and if there is a sector reference to it or something that the sector needs to be aware of, he will do a blog for that. So that is a really good up-to-date way of seeing things. But I just wanted to very quickly run through some of these. So I've got the steps in ICO order, and I wanted you to have these as links to the actual blog articles themselves. So under awareness, for instance, there is some stuff around alumni, around the data protection bill and public authorities. That one particularly has some relevance. For a long time, there was a lot of confusion about when or what a public authority was going to be. Is the universities, are they going to be included? And I think recently now they have said that anybody who does FOI is now seen as a public authority, and that has all sorts of implications for yourselves. On the information we hold, how are we all doing with our doing our information gathering exercises? Yeah, is it a bit of a challenge? Yeah, it's a lot of work. It used to be the sole domain of this rare and small breed of record and information managers who love to beaver around and do such things, and all of a sudden, if you've got one of those and you haven't involved them because they actually understand some of this, and if you haven't got them, then there are some advice about how you do these sorts of audits. So for myself, we're running an audit at the moment over our 7 directorates, and we're getting there. But it's not the easiest things to do. And then you've got to try and keep it up to date, which is also a challenge as well. But we're going to have a talk about that in a bit. We've also got some stuff about looking at the way that we categorize our services and looking at our risk. And Andrew will be touching on this in his talk as well, which I think could be quite useful. On individual rights, I say there are some things now coming out on individual rights. There's some stuff around portability, and there is some stuff around, for instance, right to erasure and backups and archives. So we've got a couple of blogs on those, so click and go and have a look at those. Around legal basis, we have an article on what's your justification, and that looks at the 6 different legal bases that you can look at, and that we actually are using internally as well, and so have a look at that. There's some stuff around student unions, which is a big hot potato at the moment, what you are going to be doing around that area. And there's some stuff around web forms and consent as well. And as you know, we're trying to move away as much as we can from consent and look at the other 6 legal bases for processing. But consent is always the one that people sort of understand. But it's a difficult area. And we have an article on a new kind of consent. Data breaches, again, there's a little bit about that. If you've already got data breach processes in place, you need to speak to your IT people, you need to speak to your information security officer if you have such things in your universities and colleges. So I was just going to finish off by talking to you a little bit about what I see as the top 10 tips, and hopefully this will be of use. Actually, tip number 1 should be get a data protection officer, so I'm hoping you've already done that because we're in December now. So what I would suggest is that you look around and look to people within your institution and work out if there's anybody who can help you. So the way that I did it when I was given as the data protection officer, I said, how many subject access requests do we get in just a year? And they said 2 or 3. I said, yeah, that's fine, just add it. And about 6 months later, GDPR hit, and I thought, oh, what have I done that for? What I did was I've set up a working group within the company, so I got the legal team, the information security manager, and I'm very fortunate to have Andrew Cormack, who's our chief regulatory advisor. So his knowledge of GDPR is very strong. So we as a group have now formed together and we're supporting each other. I think they're supporting me, but anyway. We're supporting each other around this to try and push this out. And the work that we're doing internally, we're then trying to share out in case it has relevance for yourself. So I would get some form of working group together and get support. I've just managed to get one of our directors to project sponsor. And again, I think you need somebody at the top to be doing that for you, because it's really serious stuff. Talk about reputational damage to them and the amount of reputational damage that this will cause if you breach. Then tell them how much they might be fined as well. But I would do the reputational damage first. That's what I did. It scared my CEO very, very quickly and easily. So you imagine as JISC, we process a lot of, we're data processors for yourselves with a lot of student data. So we are having to be really, really, really careful with, for instance, our learning analytics program. So we have been working really tightly with that to make sure that we as a company have got ourselves covered off on that. So again, if you're processing personal data, reputational damage, if you cause a breach, should persuade your senior management to take this very seriously. And then tell them about 20 million euros. The next one is obviously to conduct an audit of what personal data the organisation holds. So the sorts of things you need to know is how's it being used, whom is it being shared or disclosed with, and where it's being transferred to as well. And that transferring of data, personal data, is a biggie. The GDPR advocates a risk-based approach. So identify, once you've done your audit, you should be able to identify what systems and services pose the most risk. So if you've got systems and processes which are processing a lot of personal data, focus on them first. If you've got a system that holds a lot of personal data, focus on that first. Get those ones done first, and then start picking off. And Andrew will talk a little bit about, say, how we've tried to analyse and get that decision of what is the most at risk. And he'll speak about that shortly. Start reviewing your data protection clauses in your agreements, particularly your supplier agreements. At JISC, we estimate about 400 supplier contracts live at the moment, of which 75% we think are using our terms and conditions. So that's fine, as long as when we tweak our terms and conditions, which we have done now, that we have to then renegotiate with those people. The 25% is the challenge. They're the biggies. They're the Googles of the world, Slack, and all sorts of products that are sat out there somewhere in the States, and yeah, could cause some issues. So review your breach notification management system. The first thing when you do breach, the ICO will ask you 3 questions. The first question is, show me what training, data protection training these staff had. The second one that they will ask you is, show us the process that you've put around this, the piece of work that you're doing to make sure that you don't breach. And the third one is, show us how you monitor that process. So it is very important around the whole of this breach notification thing to get that in your head, that you need to have a good process, rigid process going through. Obviously, with breach notification now, 72 hours from when it's first reported is a quick turnaround. A Friday afternoon on a bank holiday Monday, I'm worried, to be honest, certainly on a Friday. So make sure you look at that. Review your IT systems and internal processes. So we've got to think about things like data portability, data erasure, the actual rights of access as well to that data. So think about, once you've identified all of this personal data and the systems and processes are in, then you've got to start thinking, okay, so we've got an IT system. What happens if somebody asks for their information, erase it, or they want to move it? And see where you go with that. I think you'll be needing to speak to your IT colleagues a lot about that as well as the suppliers. Number 7, privacy notices. My favourite topic, because I've spent quite a lot of time with Andrew on privacy notices, and now I'm trying to drive new privacy notice templates through the organisation. Yeah, it's great. So review and update your student and staff privacy notices. We have the way that we've done it is that we have a generic privacy notice, which is on our website. You can find that on our website. And then for each service that we run, some of you will use our services from our website. So when you go on, well, this will happen, when you go onto the collection page, which says, please register here, there will be a more detailed, short privacy notice just explaining about that actual service and linking back to our generic privacy notice. It is a model that we put in place, and the ICO now are actually saying that's the model that they actually want. They're not the GIST model, that's their approach. They've done it independently from us, but fortunately we've gone the same way. So look at your privacy notices. Develop a template data protection impact assessment form. There's a lot of talk about DPIAs and a lot of concern, but it is only for high-risk projects and systems that you need to apply this. The Article 29 working group have got a draft on DPIA at the moment. It's been approved now. So they've got an approved DPIA on their website. And whilst the main document is a little bit flowery, just go to the appendix, because it actually gives you a checklist of what you need to test whether something is needing a DPIA. So we're basically looking at that, and we've got probably 3, 4, maybe 5 that we're going to have to do, and maybe more. But, number 9. I'm assuming that you have, under the present regime, got your subject access request forms and things like that. What we need to do is just review those. I think there are a few changes to it, so you just, again, it's just an exercise of just tweaking it. And number 10, start putting together training materials to raise staff awareness about the new rules. What I've started at JISC is I'm focusing in on the teams who are going to cause me the most problems. Are the marketing team in? Yeah, they are one. Our HR as well is another. But it is focusing in on those first. What I'm not doing is blitzing the whole company too much, just very high profile sort of bits and pieces about the changes, but nothing in depth. I will be doing that in the new year. I'm at the moment waiting to look at a revised online data protection awareness GDPR one that then I will get all of the staff in April to do. It will be mandatory, and the dartboard with my face on will come out again because that won't go down very well. But those are the sorts of things that that I would recommend you looking at if you haven't already started to do so. And my final thought is that don't forget that 25th of May 2018 is, okay, suspense. Those of you who watch gothic horror, hammer horror films, imagine the flashing lightning and the thunder. Yeah, okay, so you've got that in your head. So don't forget that 25th of May 2018 is day 1. Okay, thank you.